Welcome to the Softland Central podcast, your home for market entry knowledge and resources. Softland Central is brought to you by Softland Partners, an online marketplace to help you find best fit resources for your market entry. Find them at softlandpartners.com. And I know you can't talk about specific clients by name, but I was hoping we might be able to talk about, sort of company A in this, whatever industry had this fact pattern, and here was the playbook or whatnot that worked for them. But are there some example hypothetical companies that we may talk about that you'd say got it right? I mean, we talked about mistakes, so let's maybe go to the positive side of the ledger.
Yeah. So actually, I'm happy to sort of lay out the let's say the most common playbook for a company. Let's say, I'll coming out of the UK or Europe, I'll set up a straw man, right? And sort of play that out. And I think the most common company that we might see, let's say, is a B2B SaaS company. Let's say a B2B SaaS company coming out of London that is, let's say, between seed and Series A, and has been, and after its seed, but before its Series A round, is getting some traction in the United States, selling in remotely, right? And here's how we would sort of see that playing out, right? Is that at first there would be periodic sales here and there, let's say from the executive team attending conferences or otherwise going through their network, or maybe because their existing UK European customers have got US operations. One way or the other, they start building up a pipeline of customers and a bit of revenue out of the United States, and at some point they realize that actually we're going to get even more opportunities if we've got someone on the ground flying the flag, but we don't necessarily have the budget or the certainty yet that to hire a US team. Right. So the middle ground that we'll often see in that context is hiring a part-time contractor, right? Sales agent in the United States who is out there identifying deals and helping the company scale a little bit in the United States, right? And that's that contractor, that sales agent, can be retained out of the UK company, right? You don't need to set up full-blown U.S. operations, full-blown U.S. structure in order to do that. But at some point after that, hopefully, the company identifies even more opportunities and says, you know what, we really are being pulled into the U.S. There's clear traction now. We want to go out and hire a proper U.S. sales team and set up more formal operations. And at that point, right, the capital requirements to hire a U.S. team, given on average the higher U.S. salaries relative to the UK and Europe, generally leads the company at that point, let's say, to go out and raise a Series A round. In other words, and this is actually a very common discussion that I have here in the UK and in Europe. On average, the U.S. expansion round of venture capital tends to come from the UK or Europe, not from the U.S. Right? In other words, on average, U.S. venture capital financing tends to follow from U.S. commercialization, not the other way around, right? And I think that is something that's not always self-evident, but that's certainly something that the data has sort of borne out, is that it's usually after the company has launched and scaled in the U.S. that the U.S. venture capital tends to follow. So let's say the company then raises a round of capital from let's say from UK investors for the purpose of expanding to the US, and then it'll take that capital and then look to recruit and hire, let's say, a local US team, and maybe send some people over from HQ as well. And I will say that in our experience, and we've seen U.S. teams set up in all different ways, like only local hires, only transferred hires. I think on average, what we've seen is the most likely to succeed is when you combine local hires who are familiar with the U.S. market with individuals who have sort of the DNA of the business, right, from HQ. And especially helpful is if you can send, the first couple hires who you have in the U.S., let's say, over to HQ, and have them spend, let's say, a couple of months at HQ and get them truly integrated within the business, and then send everyone over together, right? And I think at that point, the administrative or logistical playbook, tends to be, assuming that, let's say, you're starting with a UK limited company. At that point, you tend to set up, let's say, a Delaware C corp, wholly owned subsidiary of the UK parent company, right? And you employ the U.S. employees through that Delaware C corporation, and you bring them in on employment documents that are appropriate and tailored for the relevant states that you have employees. In other words, if you have New York employees, you would have New York employment documents. If you have Florida employees, you have Florida documents, right? But they're all hired out of, as the employees, they're all hired out of your new Delaware corporation, right? You'd set up a U.S. bank account. You would get a U.S. tax advisor to help with things like getting your employer identification number, and your various tax filings. You would, let's say, extend your business insurance from let's say from the UK to the US to ensure that your business activities in the US are covered, and then you would figure out HR and admin, things like payroll, retirement benefits, health insurance. And one very common approach, and it's not universal, but I would say a common approach for let's say seed, Series A, Series B backed companies going into the U.S. on the HR front, is to use what's called a professional employer organization, where they're co-employing the employees together with Delaware subsidiary, and then the PEO is providing the health insurance and retirement plan and payroll and the like. But those are the main areas, right? So it's legal, tax, insurance, banking, and HR and admin. And I guess I would also throw in immigration. If you are sending anyone over from HQ, I think. We had, it's a little bit different now, sort of speaking in the COVID-19 environment, but I think historically we had been seeing, work visas about 4 to 6 months that it would take. So in terms of planning, if you're sending anyone over, sort of think ahead 4 to 6 months in order to get the visas over the line. But the other items, the legal, tax, insurance, et cetera, that all that work can be done typically in a matter of weeks.